Good afternoon. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, December 8th, 2025. Uh, and I'm just checking in. There's quite a few of you that actually emailed me regarding the last video that I did, which was a Friday video where I talked about the no contact phenomenon. I talked about filial law, that's spelled F like Frank, Ilial. And I gave some examples of individuals that have gone no contact with their family uh, and they talk about their story and they talk about their family of origin and sort of what led them to this choice on their TikTok channels. What I find interesting about different social media platforms, and this is neither here nor there. It's just an observation that I made. Um, I noticed that like when I was on Facebook, it seemed more about like I have this sort of thing to say about this particular topic, whether it's health, politics, art, culture, maybe an individual that I met in passing or a friend I have and I have questions or whatever. It's just personal stuff. And it's like these long form essays that are written. And then the comments are also long form comments. And you get into these looped in discussions where you've got comment threads and replies. And it's all done through sort of like this old school written format, which goes back to back to the early days of the founding of our country when these, um, uh, I think they're called commentators, polemicists. Is that the right term that I'm thinking of? Where they would write these long form essays and then there would be sort of a back and forth conversation that took place between these influential individuals. And it was called Engaging in Polemics, I believe. Let me just double check on that. And I noticed that Facebook sort of represented that. And then, of course, Instagram is really about like, it feels like Instagram was more about, like maybe modeling videos or how to bake a cake or how to put on your makeup. It seemed more, here's a video about how to put on lipstick or something like that. Yeah, and so the term that I was thinking of before in these sort of long form commentary, back and forth commentary is polemics. So it felt like Facebook is sort of this old school engagement in polemics. Instagram was more about like, well, instant gratification of, you get a quick fix, a quick dopamine hit, like kind of like a piece of candy, it's and you get this quick image and maybe you know, some filter on there. And Twitter, of course, is sort of a form of Facebook, but it's you only get a certain amount of characters if you don't have a blue check, which I don't, and I don't want one because I won't pay for it. But you only get a certain amount of characters to make your point, and so you can also get into threads and commentary about whatever topic it is that you're bringing up on Twitter. So it's definitely more. It's become more curated, so it feels more right wing. It feels more libertarian. It doesn't feel like there's a good mix of people there to engage with. It feels pretty skewed, which is why I'm not on it a whole lot. Um, Pretty slanted, I should say, towards one particular, um, like, political ideology or theory. And then, of course, you have TikTok, which is kind of like Instagram, but instead of it being so heavily curated, it's not curated. It's people usually just like sitting in their car and telling a story, and it's story time. In fact, that's what a lot of the TikTok users, when they start to talk about, whatever it is they're talking about, they usually introduce it as, okay, story time. So it feels more like stories stitched together, which I find pretty fascinating. Of course, I'm against all of it. I think social media, once again, philosophically, as I've mentioned before, social media has broken the social contract. I am the last generation that had a working social contract established in society. This is pre social media, where you actually went outside and had a life outside of a computer screen or outside of the thing that you hold in your hand. In fact, the New York Times recently did an article regaling Generation X. And what I'll do is when I'm done with this, I will link it into the description of the video so that you can take a look at it. I think it's a free, one of those free articles, and it's really fascinating. There's actually a couple of them that I found that talk about how Generation X might just currently be the best generation that we've ever had to date. So, and it gives all of these really powerful reasons why. And I could go into it, but I'd much prefer that you read the article for yourself and you decide. Okay, so what I want to do is address some of the questions. And you know what? This is an open forum. I make my videos publicly a lot of the time, so I have no problem answering these questions publicly. Number one, people are asking about JP's job, and he still has it. But we are extremely, it seems like every day we are in a more tenuous and strained position than we were the day before. End of year reviews are coming up. Now remember, he started in April. He was never given any goals. He's never had a performance review in the 9 months or so that he's been there, or however many months it's been since April to December. His boss has, padded his employee file with a couple of reprimands. He had to get the CEO involved in response to some of the reprimands. I mean, it's just been a very ugly situation. He's been kept out of meetings. He's been had projects taken away from him for no reason. He's been mobbed by developers. He's been targeted by HR and by his boss. I mean, it has been one thing after another. And so this latest round is that these end of year reviews are coming, and he was told to do something completely different than what the rest of the company was told. So he had to contact HR and say, I was in the middle of doing the thing that you told everybody in the company to do, but then my boss intercepted and told me not to do it. Instead, she wants me to do something different. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. This wasn't a complaint. This was literally just describing a situation as it is. So it's not great, but we're just, dealing with it. I want to talk about, I want to put a pin in this conversation about his boss and about her behavior. I want to put a pin in that and come back to it. But now I want to address the next question. Have I gone no contact with my own mother? No. In fact, I just had a great conversation with her a couple of minutes ago. She called to ask how I was doing. I have a tumor in my right atrium of my heart. I had an MRI last Thursday. I'll find out what more needs to be done in the coming weeks. When I speak to a cardiologist, it's probably going to be a pretty non-invasive procedure to get rid of it. It's a benign tumor as far as everyone is concerned. And my mom has some excellent advice on health and what to take and what to do. She's one of those people that you would definitely want on your side when you have health problems. And so I'm not going to go no contact with her because she called me and asked me how I was doing. And to me, that shows that she cares. And so I am a priority, not the priority, but I am a priority for her. She does care about, my health. So I don't see a problem with continuing to work on and have a relationship with her. But, everything, nobody's perfect and everything is very cautionary, right? We're exercising caution. Um, Now, somebody said, wait a minute. Somebody contacted me and said, wait a minute. Filial law, that's pronounced filial, and that's F like Frank, Ilial. Filial law has been around forever and they never enforce it. Okay, let's address this. You're right. It has been around forever. Um, why am I bringing it up? And why does it feel like it's a topic that needs to come to the surface? Like people need to address this. Well, because Medicare, which is like I get Medicare, people who are retired get Medicare. There are lots of people out there that get Medicare. Medicare is going away as of 2033. It will become insolvent, which means that Medicaid, which is state funded and federally funded, will be burdened. So not only will it be burdened by 2023 when Medicare is slated to be gone, so all of the support network and the medical support network funding network will be exclusively through Medicaid. But at that same time, you're going to have this giant influx of baby boomers who will be entering into the long-term care market. You'll have more baby boomers than you've ever had in any previous generation entering into nursing homes. You will have more baby boomers than ever who will need in-home care help. You will have more baby boomers who will need nurses. They will need physical therapists. They will need people who work with dementia, people who work with Alzheimer's. They will need more care than any generation in the past. And so not only will you have Medicare, that it won't be helping to fund that care, but you're going to have an overburdened Medicaid, which means that each individual may cap out on what their on what Medicaid will pay for. So this is a huge burden on the care industry. The and I think that the current administration in some ways is like hurting this, like not doing it any favors, but at the same time I think you have another section of the administration that is like doing everything they can to make sure that everyone gets the care that they need. Um, so we'll see how it works out. But in the meantime, there is something called filial law, and that's Filial. And basically, what it says is whatever you have um, in your name as the child of the baby boomer who will need all of this extra care, if the baby boomer has exhausted all of their social safety nets, meaning Medicare or Medicaid, and they've run through all of their own money and they still need, hospice care. They still need people to come in and care for them. It's going to have to be covered by the family. So the family's response to that might be like, okay, well, instead of paying someone to take care of mom, or dad or whoever, let's just move them into the home and we will take care of them and we will use our own money and we will do the best we can as opposed to paying for services, right? So that's one way that they can do it. Another way that they can do it is to, go ahead and use their own money to pay for the parents' care. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. Another thing that parents are doing, the baby boomers are doing, is they are putting everything in their name into their child's name so that when they get to a point where they need that extra care, all of their savings accounts or their retirement accounts or even their homes are the value of their home, if they want to sell the home for money, is put into a trust which will specifically be established to pay for the care of the baby boomer so that it is not burdening the the offspring's or the child's bank accounts or their income won't have to be allocated to take care of. So some baby boomers are thinking ahead, which is fine. But what happens, and so issue, this issue, that the reason that it's an issue and it's trending now, and that it comes at the same time that this sort of no contact, estranged relationship between parent and child kind of conversation is coming up, which affects 35% of the population, is because you've got these kids that go, I know that my mom or dad, whoever, doesn't have any money. And I know that they're still going to be alive and around in 2033 or in that time frame, and that they'll probably need lots of extra care. And I know that they've run through all their money and they don't have any money to take care of themselves. And I know that that burden is going to fall on me or my siblings. But why should I have to do that when I haven't even had a relationship with this person for decades, right? So that's the question. And if they live in a state, if the parent lives in a state that enforces filial law, then it will be very hard for the offspring or for the children of those parents to get out from under this, you know. Right now it's only 29 states. We have 52 states in the Republic, so there's only 29 states that have signed up for this. There are, still about half, a little less than half or so of the country has not signed up for it. But as Medicare goes away and as Medicaid becomes overburdened and they change their criteria for how much money is allowed per elder care case, I imagine more and more states will pick up filial law, because the last thing you want is for the nursing homes and the care facilities to like get embroiled in lawsuits and try to figure out how they're going to get paid when they care for these individuals once their Medicaid and Medicare is exhausted, right? So I think the state will step in and go, yeah, let's go ahead and pass a filial law so that, pass a filial law so that these things can get covered. Okay. So what was I thinking when I was talking about it last Friday? Well, what I was thinking is that, the burden should be on the children that are power of attorney, that do have like the better relationship with the parent, that those are the children that should be burdened with this because they're the ones that were invested into in the first place. So I agree with the scapegoated children who were like, I never even got a freaking, you know, box of tissue from my mom, let alone, thousands of dollars to put into a trust to pay for her long-term care. Like, I work very hard. I work, 100 hours a week. I barely make ends meet on my own. And now I'm supposed to take care of someone that never even, like, really, wanted a relationship with me in the first place. A person that drove me to suicide, and I had to go no contact in order to, like, survive. So I think that they have a case. That's all I'm saying. Now I don't know, there's no legal precedent for it, but I think they have a case. And that's all I'm saying, is that if there is a situation where, and all this criteria has to be met, right? So the Medicare has to be exhausted, the Medicaid has to be exhausted, they still have to be living past 2033. They had to have run through all of their own money until the bills are stacking up, and the home care workers or the nursing home people or the nurses or the physical therapists or the people who work with dementia patients, all these people are like working with these elderly people who need this specialized long-term care. They're not getting paid. So they're going to turn to the children and say, we're going to sue you so that we can get paid. And your parent lives in a state that recognizes filial law. And if you violate, the terms of filial law, and if you violate the terms of whatever judgment is ordered against you to pay our bills, you can go to jail. And that's really, that's how it is. And so, what is this conversation really about? What is it really about at the end of the day? Is it about no contact? Not really. Is it about estranged relationships between parent and children? Not really, although that is something that should be addressed. What it's really about is debt. That we currently live in a debt based economy and that it will get worse. That's what this is about. This is about a debt based economy where it is punitive if you don't pay somebody else's debt, which is what it comes down to. It becomes a punitive measure where you could potentially go to prison for not paying someone else's debt, which is unbelievable, which is literally unbelievable, right? If you just strip away, all this other stuff, all this emotional stuff, and you just look at the core message here is that one individual will go to jail if they refuse to pay the bills of another individual. That's what it comes down to. And it's a debt-based punitive system that is being developed. Not AI. Not, oh no, pennies are going away. Nothing like that. Not cryptocurrency, not digital currency, not AI. Not even a tracking system where, where you put a chip in your hand and you can pay for your groceries with a wave of your hand or whatever. Not even that. It's a debt-based punitive economy. It's one thing to be a debt-based economy. That's what we have now. But through this filial law, we are introducing the concept of it being punitive and you having to pay the debt of somebody else's. You having to pay off someone else's debt. That is what's scary. Okay? So that's the real conversation around that. Okay. So in answer to the question, no, I have not gotten no contact with my mother. She did call me this morning, very concerned about the MRI that I had on Thursday. So we have a relationship. We can talk openly about, what the next steps are needed. She's concerned and she's not a monster. So I just wanted to put that out there. Nothing is a straight line, though. There are pitfalls and there are some things that are still really troubling about the relationship, but I take my wins, right? I try, like today, I'm on a positive high. I feel very good about some decisions that JP and I came to regarding his work situation, some decisions that we made about, our life. And so, I have a good, strong partner, a husband that is sort of meets me 100% of the way. I meet him 100%. That way, if I'm in a coma, he's 100%. Or if he's in a coma, I'm 100%. So we can carry each other along. Okay. So that's where I am there. And let's go back to the boss, JP's boss at his job. One of the things that I noticed about this woman is that she's a different kind of narcissist. She operates on a different kind of frequency, and I'm learning from Richard Grannon about it's called delusional shared fantasy space. And so what this woman has done, if I could just sum it up in a nutshell, is she has cultivated a delusional fantasy space about who she is and what she represents and what she believes that she is. And everybody around her has been sort of beaten down into submission, into agreeing with her. So they share that delusional fantasy space with her. Well, along comes, one of the most creative, insightful, and autonomous and independent thinkers that you will ever meet in your life to say, no, you are not. No, I am not going to share in your delusional fantasy. No, you are not going to do these things to me, and I will describe it accurately to the people that matter. And in JP's case, that's HR and the CEO. when a person, and it was okay, so let me pause there for a minute. I'm interrupting myself. It's at this point that I start to say, like, this is a person that you and I have never dealt with. She screamed at him on the phone, which was an unbelievable boundary breaker, right? Um, it 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 chilled me to the bone, right? And so I started to do a little research into the types of narcissists that do break boundaries. They will show up at the door. They will drive by your house and make sure if you're a remote worker that your car is parked in the driveway and that you're not out, running an errand when you should be at work. They will stalk you at your desk without you knowing. They obsess over they would contact IT like, every hour on the hour. Did he send any private emails? Did he send any company emails to his private account? Did he do this? Did he do that? Like they operate on a completely different frequency because their obsession with their delusional fantasy about themselves is the only thing that matters. And an autonomous, free thinking, independent minded, intelligent human being that refuses to engage in that fantasy is now a threat to them, and they transition. It seems like they transition from narcissist to psychopath. Okay. Because I said to JP, I'm like legitimately afraid of this woman. Um, and I actually didn't really go to those spaces. At first. It wasn't until I had a dream where I saw her walking down a path, the path of the house across the street from us, walking towards our house. I had a dream about that. And so what my dream was telling me is that she who lives in a completely different state, she does not live in the state of Mississippi, she lives in a different state and in a different town, that somehow she had invaded our sweet little neighborhood, our protective space, our safe space, that she had invaded that somehow and was marching right towards our front door. And that was sort of my subconscious warning me that you're not dealing with your typical narcissist here. You're dealing with the 21st century narcissist. So I think I mentioned this before a few weeks back. Narcissists used to not have as much power. They were these annoying types of people that were constantly causing trouble at your job, but nobody gave them any mind and they didn't have a lot of power. They were just these types of individuals that lived in the background. It was always annoying that maybe they got more money or more promotions, but it was usually because their own managers were just like, I just don't want to deal with this person. I'll just give them what they want. And it was usually that you had like somebody in a position of authority to sort of keep them from, you know, from populating their influence or having influence over you. Well, now in their behavior has been allowed to really grow like a cancer in society, and I think social media has a lot to do with this, that now they're in positions of authority and they're literally ruining people's lives. For instance, if JP were to get fired at the end of the day today, he would be denied unemployment and he would be denied any future jobs based on what's in his employee file right now. So he has to fight, constantly fight to make sure that, his income is relevant and that he maintains an income. But at the same time, he cannot give this woman any supply. Like, he cannot engage with her. He does not engage with her. Narcissistic supply would be a danger for him. So he just doesn't ever speak to her unless he absolutely has to. He doesn't ask her for goals. He doesn't say, hey, you never contacted me about my 30-day, 60-day, or 90-day review. Um, you know, I he just does not engage with her. If the least amount of interaction with her is actually necessary for his safety, because I think that she is the kind of person that will find any excuse to break more boundaries, and actually she's already done so much to him. So much by way of, like, you know, job security and future job security and even unemployment, which Mississippi has the lowest unemployment in the country. I think in California it's like 1,200 a month, and in Mississippi it's like 800. You know, the average unemployment is usually around 900 a month, 1,000 a month, whatever. But so even for this piddly little unemployment insurance, which he has paid into every paycheck, a portion of his paycheck goes into the little unemployment bank so that if he gets let go, he can have a little bit of a pittance to draw on to pay his bills, right? Until he can get another job. She's made it so that even that won't be approved. So it's really bad. Like, it's really, really bad. It's a very, very bad situation. But at the same time, it's like, you know, we're not living in fear, right? So what we're looking at with this new version of a narcissist is somebody who has got a very fragile ego, and they live in a delusional fantasy space. I don't want to get too deep into her past. Maybe she was treated very badly by her parents, and so she had to work very hard to develop this hyped up ego of herself. She became a narcissist. She became the person who can do no wrong. She became extremely egocentric and goal oriented, to the point where if anything even is a hint of a threat to her ego or her delusional fantasy space, that she snaps and turns into predatory, boundary breaking, psychopathic personality traits. Spiritually, she's already caused a lot of damage. It was the day that she blew up his phone, which was October 1st, that I went into like a heart event, right? Which has led me to this point 2 months later, where it showed that there's a tumor in my heart. I'm not saying she caused the tumor, but that it led that I went into an extreme state of hyperinflation and inflammation in my body, which put me into a perpetual state of fight or flight perpetually. So, one thing, talked to my mom this morning, she reminded me about the breathing. The breathing, she said, is your own oxygen will save your life, she said, or something like that. And that I really took that to heart. So this woman has already done unbelievable amounts of damage to my health and to JP's health. Nightmares, waking up hyperventilating, breaking down in the kitchen, sobbing for no reason. Just suddenly, he gets an email from her and he just goes into panic mode. Like, she's horrible, 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 horrible person. It doesn't mean he's weak. It just means that she is a different kind of narcissist, a predator, a killer, a psychopath, somebody who has no boundaries, somebody who will go to those spaces that I was talking about. Excuse me. So I wanted to address that if you look at JP's situation as a small microscopic example of what's happening in the world, then what we have is a new breed of narcissists that want to hoover up your supply. They want to engorge themselves on your essence and on your empathy and on your intelligence. She has gone so far as to, like, he'll say, he started using a term, which is a pretty normal term in his industry. It's called, what is it? It's called, it's when things develop as you go along. I forget the term, but it's as it's your output, your outcome changes as the iterative. That's what the word is. He used the word iterative in passing a couple of times. She had never used it before, and all of a sudden now she is dictating to him, saying, "You're not iterative enough," and all this stuff, right? So that's a classic narcissist move. You know, they steal from you, turn it against you to make them look superior so that they can confirm that delusional space that they live in of superiority, of great knowledge, of great power, that they're, again, knowledge based, high IQ, goal oriented, da da da. All those things that define a classic narcissist. A classic narcissist will live in that space and they will continue to use you as a supply. And as long as and so there's this weird symbiotic relationship, but nobody's ever really like threatened. It's just draining emotionally and intellectually and sometimes physically on the person that they're sort of using these like psychological vampire techniques to pull their energy from them, right? What I'm saying is that used to be sort of like the normal way of dealing with narcissists and narcissistic supply. But this new version that we're dealing with, that we're seeing with this particular boss, is something that goes beyond that. It's a little more demented. It's psychopathic. It's boundary breaking. It's a delusional space of grandiosity that he does not share that vision. And that is a direct threat to her reality. Her reality breaks. And when her reality breaks, then her idea of what is good and what is moral and what is right also breaks. And there aren't enough people around her to act as a buffer. Like, oop, you're taking it too far. Like, don't pick up that knife and try to slice that employee. That's not good. There aren't enough people around her to guide her into a more moral space. The only thing, in my opinion, the only thing that is keeping her from doing like the most outrageous behavior, which I think she is perfectly capable of, things like driving by our house to make sure his car is parked in the driveway, knocking on the door, demanding to speak to him, like just this outrageous behavior, right? Because she blew up his phone. And that, I think, gave us a window into her true nature. The only thing I think that's keeping her from really, truly going into those spaces of psychopathy and like maybe physically hurting him and breaking more boundaries is that this is how a narcissist thinks. They don't have any morals. So she goes, I have a child who represents all good things and represents that I am a powerful person. She gave birth like really late in life. So she's like 56 and she has like an 8-year-old. So that means that she would have given birth like around 48 or something. That's pretty late in life. So he was like this miracle baby, right? So if she does fall to her true nature, which is predatory, boundary breaking, psychopathy, shared, or her delusional fantasy space has been broken. She loses her grip with reality, and that has caused her to move into those other demented spaces. If she does go into that demented space, then she will lose an extension of her that represents all the things that she believes, right? The state will take away her miracle baby, and she's a walking miracle. By being able to give birth to this person, she considers herself a walking miracle, and her ego is even more inflated because of this miracle baby, right? So if she so that's the only thing that's keeping her from doing it, is that if she is separated him from him, if the law was like, oh, guess what? Sorry to break it to you, but like stalking and murder is bad, and you just did this to this, to this guy that you hired. It's like super bad. You're gonna have to go to jail. So sorry, but that's the way the law works. She will be separated from her miracle and separated from herself. So that's the only thing that keeps her from from breaking those further boundaries, right? Not because she's moral, not because, guess what? Maybe I shouldn't be knocking on the door of my employees or driving by their homes and stalking them or blowing up their phones or even killing them, because she doesn't have any morals. She doesn't live by a moral code the way you and I do. She lives in a fantasy space. And in that fantasy space, she is like a supreme being. And that's what she really believes. And she gets it. She gets that supply from everyone around her. Oh, you are a supreme being. You gave birth at 48 or 49 or whatever. You are a senior VP at this company. You've been there for 30 years. You know the ins and outs of it. Oh, you went to this great school. Oh, da, 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 all this stuff. You are a supreme being. And so she gets that supply all around her. But she doesn't get it from JP. So I wanted to touch on that. I put a pin in it. I wanted to come back to it. I wanted to explore it. I wanted to share that with you. It's something I have been listening to Richard Grannon. I was like, okay, I think this is what we're dealing with now in society, is we're dealing with these kinds of narcissists that have taken it to the next level. And I think a lot of our tech giants are in that delusional space. They've curated a message out to the world, and now they believe that message that's been curated for them, or one that they've curated. They actually believe it. So they're living in a delusional shared fantasy space with the world. They have their supply of influencers on social media that lift them up. They have their, the feedback loop through the algorithms that they've created to continue to create this delusional fantasy space. So I think what we're seeing is this type of narcissist is different than, like, maybe the narcissist from 10 years ago. They move into those really boundary breaking spaces. They really get into your head. They really cause a lot of physical damage, a lot of health problems. That's another thing, too. Every single person at that office who works for this woman has cancer or is overweight or has heart problems. Every single person. And what is JP doing? Swimming every other day, riding his bike every other day, eating a salad for lunch. Yeah, I know we're working on the oxalates thing, but for him it's working. Grilled chicken salad, you know, not eating burgers every day like everyone else, not doing the gross food, but keeping it super clean, taking his vitamins, going and having a whole, like, a beautiful life here in Biloxi, especially now. Now is when it starts here in Biloxi. It started like the first week of December, and it's not going to end until like March when Mardi Gras is over. So we are going to have a very busy, exciting, happy life. Lots of stuff in the community is free. So, we can continue to stockpile and make sure that if the axe ever falls, that, we'll be okay for a few months. But the, and just doing really holistic and things that we feel are really good for us. Like this weekend, just this past weekend, was filled up with things. We went to a tree lighting, or we went to the lighthouse lighting, which always kicks off the season. And we watched the little kids from a local church choir sing songs. And then we went to a beautiful concert at a very humble church in the next town over and saw Handel's Messiah. And then yesterday we went to the cute little Catholic church, which is just down the street from us, gorgeous little church, where we listened to Vivaldi's Gloria, and listened to a small sermon, and we watched the regatta, which is all the boats lit up in their Christmas glory, sailing along the waters at night, so you could see the lights reflecting off the water. It's very beautiful. And we went out and had a slice of pizza and ran across some beautiful roosters that were just like walking around the sidewalk. So, I mean, we we try to live this really full life. We try to live this really happy life and not let these really dark forces and this really dark energy get us down too much. But it's definitely something that we need to address as a society and as a community. One, you have to address what the message is regarding filial law. What it comes down to is one point, that a person will be required by the law to pay for another person's debt. And if they don't, there will be punishment. So it becomes punitive. That is chilling. That's terrifying to me. Okay. And then the second thing we need to address in society is that in this new debt based paradigm, out comes a new version of a narcissist. Out comes this predatory, boundary breaking, delusional fantasy narcissist that believes that they are a supreme being of some sort or they're sort of godlike. And that if you are an individual that doesn't agree with their own version of themselves, they will kill you or at least do everything they can in their power to try to kill you. And that's really also very scary, but also not at the same time. Because I feel like once you know these people, then you know how to handle them. And JP, of course, handles everything beautifully. He doesn't give her any supply. He just doesn't engage with her at all. You know, they're like off in their corners. You know, it's a Mexican standoff, basically, is what he calls it. So, you know, and then we also have really good people, my mom included, who is offering us incredible pearls of wisdom that we can step out of our own tragic spaces and our own, because we're too close to the situation. We need somebody who can come in from the side and say, okay, this is what you need to do next regarding this situation. And so it gives us really good advice. And, you know, that's worth gold. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'm in a good space today. Tomorrow or Wednesday, I might not be. That's just the way life is, you know. And sometimes you catch me on a good day, sometimes you catch me on a bad day, but whatever. The bottom line is that, you know, we have to address these things. And I also want to communicate my appreciation for the friends who continue to support and continue to engage and continue to show concern. Yeah, having a tumor in my heart, it's no fun. I can feel it sometimes. And it's not fun. But it sure does explain a lot about some other things that were going on with me, like lack of blood flow, which was causing my eyes to get really red, and some other things too, physical things, which I had attributed to my autoimmune illness, but were actually heart related. So it's nice to have an answer. Now, how do we fix it? That's something I can work on with my mom, and that's something my cardiologist can work on with me as well. So we'll figure it out. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll probably speak to you sometime later this week. Bye.